Imperfect, Unconditional Love. An essay by James Mahu. Question. I realize the world is varied beyond comprehension, but there are themes that seem to run across all cultures, and one of those themes, especially right now, seems to be one of unrest and turmoil. What can one person do to calm the situation we're in? To contribute to it in some way that helps steer humanity to a more peaceful and sustaining world that benefits all of us? Answer. As we can imagine, there's no singular answer to this question. It seems sometimes that everyone has their own answer, or there are herds of thoughts that congeal on one particular ideology. However, you can listen to the voice within you, that voice I refer to as the infinite self or sovereign integral, and you can cultivate a partnership between your finite, temporal self and that part of you that is infinite. In doing that, you can bring more of the infinite perspective into this finite world of human life. This is the one act that will benefit all. As the ratio of the infinite self to the finite self expands across all local universes, it is the adage that all boats rise with the tide. The tide, in this case, is the awareness of the infinite self. When our awareness is focused on our finite self, our body, feelings, and thoughts, we can simultaneously be aware of our infinite self. They are not incompatible fields of perception. And what is the infinite, other than an impossibly abstract concept? There are fundamental continuums in duality that contain subcontinuums like branches of a tree. An example would be the fundamental continuum that defines the duality of love and fear. This continuum contains all emotions, as if the fractal structure was fear that led to love, that led to fear, and then to love, and it cycled endlessly. And all of the other emotions were variations of fear and love. What is the fundamental polarity of the continuum of fear and love? At the very furthest poles of the continuum, what exists there? In the polarity of love, there is unconditional love, imbued with the intelligence of one and all. In the fundamental polarity of fear, there is the unfaltering sense of separation. We are alone, separated from our very source, like toddlers who are taken from their parents and left to survive on their own. Between those two poles is a vast network of dualities that emerge from this fundamental continuum. Fear and love become nuanced, watered down, and generally made to be more reasonable in social, human terms. New emotions begin to sprout into the human genome and physical structure. Emotions like anxiety, hatefulness, passion, frustration, envy, compassion, desire, manipulation, kindness, and greed. All of these emotions are part of the one fundamental continuum of fear and love that defines space-time duality. We are part of the continuum of fear and love, as well as its many branches. It is a dimension of duality we experience within our local universe, and it comprises these emotional centers. It is the emotional dimension, yet it is a part of each of us. There is also a mental dimension, and its fundamental continuum of duality is also fear and love. However, our interpretation and expression is with thought and reason, as opposed to feelings. And again, it is part of us and all life. Even plants have emotions and thoughts. They interpret their local universe and have a sense of multiple dimensions, thus they can think. They can also express themselves. All physical, earthly life is part of the physical, emotional, mental dimensions. There are no boundaries between the dimensions and the life forms within them. We can reason our way out of fear and its associated emotions, and with our thoughts, we can move them to the side of the continuum that is of love, peace, harmony, ease, and goodwill. This is the mental perspective of our internal, invisible thoughts. These thoughts probe the continuum of fear and love, and each time they probe, they spark a learning that deepens our understanding as both a finite and infinite self. It is a choice we each make as to where we probe the continuum of fear and love. However, this choice is constrained by our knowledge and belief. If we have a broad knowledge of behavioral intelligence from a scientific, social, philosophical, and spiritual point of view, we can then make better choices. Lacking these, we are more prone to follow our innate knowledge or an ideology paddled by outside forces. This innate knowledge is something of a hand-me-down from our ancestors long forgotten. We have this knowledge stored within us. It is innate knowledge. Whatever name we give to it, this knowledge is not a byproduct of human curation in educational institutions of one sort or another. It remains absolutely wild and untethered to any human embellishment or elaboration, and this is because we are sovereign, free will, infinite beings. Truth has to come from inside us. This innate knowledge is that we are infinite beings operating a finite interface. In this case, a human interface. And we're doing this within a space-time duality. We're exploring the space-time duality in order to learn how to survive and thrive through our finite interface, while simultaneously learning to align our finite interface to our infinite self. This innate knowledge is within every single life form. It cannot be otherwise. How much a physical life form is aware of this knowledge correlates to where it chooses to probe on the continuum of fear and love. If we live in a physical body, then we also live in an emotional and mental dimension, which means we interact with space-time duality and the continuum of fear and love at multiple levels, and we do so with free will. We choose where we interact, and how much we use our innate knowledge to decide where we probe on the fundamental continuum. Where we probe determines our local universe experience to a significant extent. This, then, informs how we bring the infinite into the finite. How we create overlaps in our local universe. What are these overlaps? Overlaps are the point of interface between polarities like fear and love, light and darkness, anger and peacefulness, to name a few. For example, in the case of day and night, a sunrise or sunset would be the point of overlap. The overlap, in the physical realm of the infinite and finite, defines the behaviors of imperfect, unconditional love and kindness. Love is imperfect, because we are unique, and therefore, all is subjective. In such a world, there can be no judgment. If there is no judgment, there is no perfect and imperfect that oversees the continuum of fear and love. That is the core nature of unconditional love. So, in order to practice it, and create conscious overlaps into our local universe, we express love and kindness subjectively, and these acts cannot be judged. It can truly be that simple. The overlap of fear and love is imperfect, unconditional love. The imperfect is the conditional fear caused by separation from our infinite self, and the unconditional love is caused by the sovereign, free will accorded to each of us by one and all. Those two forces intermix in a balanced ratio, and when our behavior expresses this ratio, this overlap of the fundamental continuum of fear and love, we bring, in partnership, the infinite into the finite. And this simple act, backed by our innate knowledge, becomes our individual way, our sovereign path, to lift the tide a little higher. To ensure that no ship of life is grounded, ensnared in the material dimensions, cut off from the oceans of their infinite self. Thus, it is the sovereign path that leads to the behaviors of imperfect, unconditional love, which acts as the interpretative and expressionary forces of our life. This is the embodied, sovereign integral consciousness. Unlike what many believe, this consciousness is not a personality like we think of when we imagine a human being. It is not a human being. It is an infinite being. It is a being that is simultaneously sovereign and integral. Its sensory system is so different from our human self that we cannot bring it into our physical, emotional, and mental dimensional constructs. How would we put the ocean in the drop? Well, the answer to this question is important to understand. the ocean and the drop are the same. They are simply at different levels of scale. They are nested within and without. They are dimensions of infinitude that stretch on without end or beginning of any substantive definition. There are no definitions for the infinite self that comprise us. All sovereign life forms are parts of an infinite self, and this infinite self is part of a planetary consciousness. And this planetary consciousness is part of a galactic consciousness. And it goes on, beyond what is necessary to understand with a human interface in our spacetime. Thus, the whole of us is fractured into sovereign parts, and we forget the whole and become the part. We forget the ocean and become the drop, and that drop becomes an ocean, and it recursively telescopes in all fractal dimensions. The infinite self is not a body. It is a consciousness that is bodiless, and yet it occupies countless bodies. This is the ultimate secret that has been veiled. We believe that extraterrestrials exist, and yet we do not know that we are infinite beings, sovereign and integral, existing as consciousness in an infinite spacetime. We telescope into a planetary spacetime and embody a finite life form or interface, and we exist temporally in that life form. That life form is one of many that we experience in order to live as our infinite self in spacetime dimensions that we create. We create both the veil and the lifting of it. We invest in the slow, dense vibration of physical spacetime to create experiences that are literally our creations, no different than when an artist paints a canvas. Life itself is the canvas, and in a single lifetime we can paint millions of canvases.